What if the biggest cover-up in American history had nothing to do with aliens at all? For decades, the U.S. government looked people in the eye, deflected questions about strange lights in the sky, classified thousands of documents, and let an entire nation believe in little green men, when the truth was something far more calculated, far more strategic, and honestly, far more fascinating. And now, in 2025, those classified files are being opened one by one. And what's inside them is rewriting everything we thought we knew. Here's the question nobody is asking loudly enough. If the government was hiding something about UFOs, what exactly was it hiding? And why did it work so perfectly for so long? Buckle up, because this story starts not in outer space, but in the middle of the Cold War. And it ends somewhere you never expected. Let's set the scene. It's 1947. World War II just ended 2 years ago. The Soviet Union is rapidly building nuclear weapons. Tensions between the US and the USSR are at a boiling point. Every military, every intelligence agency, every government on Earth is in a constant race for secrets, for technology, for the edge that would tip global power in their favor. Now imagine you're a US military strategist. You've developed a revolutionary new piece of surveillance technology, a high-altitude balloon capable of drifting silently across the Soviet Union, listening for nuclear test signatures. It's invisible to the naked eye from the ground. It operates at the edge of the atmosphere. No radar of that era can track it reliably. You've built the perfect spy tool. There's just one problem. If your spy balloon crashes somewhere, say a remote farm field in New Mexico, and a farmer finds the debris, what do you say? Do you admit you've been running secret surveillance missions that technically violate international airspace? Do you start an international incident that could escalate into nuclear war?
On July 8, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release. It stated, and I want you to understand how extraordinary this was, that they had recovered a flying disc. A flying disc. The United States military publicly announced the recovery of a flying disc. The world lost its mind. Headlines from New York to London to Tokyo blared the news. People panicked, people celebrated, radio stations interrupted their programming. Within 24 hours, the story had circled the entire globe. And then, almost immediately, the military walked it back. The next day, they said it was actually a weather balloon, a plain, ordinary weather balloon that a farmer had stumbled across. Nobody bought it, but nobody had a way to prove otherwise. And that was precisely the point. What actually crashed in Roswell was part of a classified surveillance program called Project Mogul. The U.S. Air Force was using enormous high-altitude balloon arrays, trailing sensitive acoustic monitoring equipment to detect Soviet nuclear tests from thousands of miles away. The technology was years ahead of anything the public knew existed. It had to stay secret. But here's the genius of the cover-up. And I use that word genuinely because from a strategic standpoint, it was brilliant. When the military walked back the flying disc story and replaced it with weather balloon, they created the perfect two-option trap. People either believed the obvious lie about the weather balloon, or they believed the exciting alternative about alien spacecraft. There was no third option on the table. Nobody was saying secret military surveillance balloon because nobody even knew such a thing existed. The UFO mythology was not a failure of the cover-up. It was the cover-up. Confusion was the strategy.
Think of it like a magician. The trick isn't just about what the magician is hiding. It's about where they point your eyes. While you're staring at one hand, the other hand is doing everything. For the next 2 decades, as the United States tested increasingly exotic aircraft, the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird, experimental drones, at classified facilities like Area 51 in the Nevada desert, UFO reports flooded in from nearby towns. Civilians saw strange shapes moving at impossible speeds. They reported lights that disappeared instantly, objects that made no sound, craft that seemed to defy the laws of aerodynamics. Every single one of them was a real aircraft, a very real, very earthly, very secret aircraft. The CIA later acknowledged this explicitly. In a 1998 declassified report, analysts estimated that over half of all UFO reports from the 1950s and 60s were actually sightings of classified U.S. aircraft. Half. More than 6,000 documented sightings, explained in retrospect by America's own secret aviation program. And the government said nothing, because saying nothing was safer than telling the truth. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that explains the Cold War era, but we're living in 2025.
Why are governments still being cagey about UFOs? Because the answer shifted. In recent years, especially from 2017 onward, a wave of genuine, unexplained aerial phenomena began emerging from military sources. An object tracked off the coast of San Diego in 2004 by the USS Nimitz carrier group, codenamed the Tic Tac, was observed dropping from 80,000 feet to near sea level in less than a second. It had no visible wings, no exhaust plume, no heat signature. It moved against the wind. It anticipated the movement of F-18 fighter jets before those pilots had even executed their maneuvers. In 2019, Navy pilots reported encounters near the U.S. East Coast almost daily. Objects would appear suddenly at 30,000 feet, linger, and then vanish without a radar track. They were not stealthy. They showed up clearly on sensors. They were simply faster than anything that should exist. In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a landmark preliminary assessment. It covered 144 UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, the government's new preferred term, reports from 2004 to 2021. The conclusion was careful, measured, and quietly stunning. Of 144 cases, they could explain exactly one. 143 cases remain unexplained. The report carefully avoided the word alien, but it listed 5 possible categories for what these objects might be: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. government or industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, or, in their own words, other. That final category, other, is where things get philosophically interesting. Because for a government document, other is an extraordinary admission. It means we don't know. We genuinely do not know. What changed between the Roswell era and now? Technology. Sensors that can track objects across multiple domains simultaneously. Cockpit cameras that record in infrared. Radar systems so precise they can detect objects the size of a golf ball from miles away. The old cover worked because the technology to document these events didn't exist. Now it does, and the documentation is undeniable. Here is the scientific truth at the heart of all of this, and it may be the most important thing in this entire video. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old. Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Modern human civilization is generously about 12,000 years old. Technological civilization, electricity, radio, space travel, is barely 150 years old. In the cosmic timeline, we are a newborn species. We have been capable of receiving or sending signals into space for a fraction of a single second in the life of the universe. Now consider this. The Milky Way galaxy alone contains somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. Recent data from the Kepler Space Telescope suggests that virtually every star hosts at least one planet. That means there are, conservatively, hundreds of billions of planets in our galaxy alone. And there are estimated to be 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. The probability, the sheer statistical weight of the numbers makes the existence of other intelligent life somewhere in the universe extraordinarily likely. This is not fringe science. This is what physicists, astrobiologists, and cosmologists largely accept. But here is the other half of the equation. The distances involved are almost incomprehensibly vast. The nearest star system to Earth, Proxima Centauri, is 4.24 light-years away. Even if you traveled at the speed of the Voyager 1 probe, the fastest human-made object we have ever launched, it would take over 73,000 years to reach it. No known physics allows for faster-than-light travel. The energy requirements to accelerate even a small object to a meaningful fraction of the speed of light are astronomical in every sense of the word. So here is the tension at the core of the UFO question. Life elsewhere almost certainly exists, but the physics of getting here from anywhere meaningful is nearly impossible with any technology we understand, which puts the unexplained 143 cases in a fascinating position. They are either technology from a foreign nation that has made a physics breakthrough the rest of the world doesn't know about, which is itself terrifying, or they are natural phenomena we haven't cataloged yet, or they are something genuinely outside our current scientific framework. What the science tells us clearly is this: we don't know. And scientifically, we don't know is not a dead end. It's a starting point. Why does any of this matter to you right now in your daily life? It matters because the history of UFOs is actually a masterclass in how governments manage information and how easily human psychology can be redirected. The Roswell cover-up worked for 50 years, not because the government was clever, but because people's desire for a dramatic answer, aliens, crowded out the more boring, more realistic explanation. We wanted the mystery to be cosmic. The reality was geopolitical. This pattern appears everywhere. In public health crises, where uncertainty gets filled by misinformation. In financial markets, where unknown variables get replaced by rumors. In politics, where incomplete information breeds conspiracy theories. Understanding the UFO cover-up is understanding the fundamental mechanism of how mystery works and how it can be manufactured. And the recent revelations, the genuine unexplained cases, the sensor data, the pilot testimonies, remind us of something important from a purely scientific standpoint. There are still things happening in the physical world that our best instruments can detect, but our best theories cannot yet explain. That gap between observation and explanation is exactly where science lives. It's where every major discovery in history began. The question is never, is this aliens? The question is always, what is this, and how do we find out? The universe is old. Space is vast. And there are things happening in our skies that we cannot yet explain. But here is what I believe, and what the science supports. The most dangerous thing in this story was never the objects in the sky. It was the willingness to let people believe in a comfortable mystery rather than confront a complicated truth. Because the moment you stop asking what is actually happening and replace it with what do I want to believe is happening, that's when you stop being a scientist and start being a story. And the universe, with 13.8 billion years of physics behind it, has no patience for stories. So the next time you see something strange in the sky, don't reach for the most exciting answer. Reach for the most honest question. What is this? How do I find out? And what would it mean if I'm wrong? That curiosity, that refusal to settle, is the most human thing about us. And it might, one day, be the thing that answers all of this for good.